And I'd like to welcome you all to the third, I think it is, CRADLE Seminar this year. Might be the second. Go so fast. And it's on a topic that's very dear to my heart. It's about how our students will be able to work in an AI mediated, enabled, saturated world, which is the one we currently live in. And before we begin, there's a couple of things I'd like to do. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are today. We're on Wurundjeri country, but we also would like to acknowledge the Boonwurrung people, because the river, you know, is kind of sits between both countries, and I'd like to pay my respects to ancestors and elders, and to acknowledge, of course, that the lands have never been ceded. And from talking about something that is very ancient and time-honoured, we move to something that is, I hope, continues some of those traditions, even though they are unknowable futures. And today we have a wonderful panel of people who've been working on a fabulous project, 16 months long, collaborative, and you'll hear all about it. So I'm going to really quickly introduce our folk. We have Danni Hamilton from Deakin Learning Futures, who does many things, arts, inclusive, education extraordinaire. We have the wonderful Lauren Hansen, who is, I think your official title is Director, Graduate Employability. But Lauren is equally fabulous and has worked for many years with a depth of sort of endeavour in the area of employability. And I think I've always enjoyed her collegiate presence, shall I say. And finally, we come to Phil Dawson, co-director CRADLE, who's known for many things, including feedback, cheating, feedback literacy, being funny, all these kinds of things. And he is the third of the Musketeers today. And I think that you'll find that they'll offer you a very interesting discussion. Now, before I do this, I'm going to do some very quick housekeeping. This talk will be for about 50 minutes, and we'll have about 10 minutes of Q&A. Then we'll draw the official proceedings to a close at the hour, which is our normal practice, and then we go to a little bit longer for people who have the time and the energy to engage. Sometimes that goes a full half an hour, sometimes it's a little bit shorter, depending on how things are going and what sort of interest and people's levels of exhaustion we have. So that's how it's going to go. And before we get to that, I will alert you to, on the 15th of April, we will have our next seminar, which is Time to Move Beyond Grades, which will be run by the wonderful Juuso Nieminen. But for now, I'll turn you over to Danni, Lauren and Phil. There we go.
To think is always to follow the witches in flight. This obscure line from Deleuze and Guattari's What is Philosophy carries with it immanence, difference, the fold, the rhizome, and the call to live an anti-fascist life. Yet it's precisely this reference that becomes the key to everything we're going to share with you today. It reminds us that philosophy is the creation of concepts, an understanding of thinking not as passive reflection or the mirroring of pre-given realities, but a creative, risky, even magical act. An act that opens up new possibilities for a world to come. We want to engage with thinking that is untimely, a midwife of the not yet thinkable, the unknown, and the genuinely new. Within this theoretical frame, to stay on the ground is to remain bound to ready-made language, conformist logic, and established forms of academic critique. To think like a witch, by contrast, is to take a flight, a far stranger, riskier movement that refuses to be contained within what is traditional, respectable, or narrowly rational. It is iconoclastic. So for me, the figure of the witch calls up childhood television of witchy poo, forever tinkering and scheming, building gadgets, brewing potions, improvising spells. Sabrina, the teenage apprentice, experimenting with charms, mishaps, magical trial and error, giving pure artisan and energy. Samantha and Endora from Bewitched, performing domestic enchantments, transformations in everyday magical tinkering with objects. These witches were makers, inventive, messy, curious practitioners. Yes, these references are a little bit dated, and you will have your own witches. They are analog and in some cases black and white, but their magic endures because witches are iconic. They launch into the night sky riding broomsticks of all things. Now think about that. These domestic cleaning tools repurposed, enchanted for nocturnal flights under cover of darkness. In this sense, the witch is not a supernatural being so much as an artisan, a practitioner who understands that her actions are never innocent, always entangled with care, risk, and experimentation. A witch knows how to taste the effects of her potions, just as thinkers must test ideas against the world rather than simply passing judgment from a distance. This is practice. To think is always to follow the witch's flight. So we are thinking with the philosophers now, and the Future Focus Gen AI program was the embodiment of witches in flight. These ideas and traditions shape everything that we're sharing with you today. We also recognise that you will have your own disciplinary perspectives that you bring into dialogue with us. And we welcome that. Naming our stance is not about drawing lines of opposition. It's a gesture of relation. By situating ourselves, we're making it easier for our perspectives to meet yours, to intersect and to agitate. We invite you to do the same. Locate yourself in relation so our lines of thought can find each other in flight. To engage with this session while keeping your feet on the ground is to risk misreading us entirely. The witch's flight carries its own urgency, which is in motion, ducking and weaving, letting their lines of flight converge, cross, and momentarily coalesce. This is what it means to think by engaging with what forces us to think, to allow ourselves to be touched, disturbed, or affected by the situations we study. As cackling witches, we are not battling for access to the night sky. We move through it, with it, as part of it. This enchanted flight is generative because witches are companions to ideas. And yet, as we follow these lines of flight, the smoke of burned witches still hangs in our nostrils, a reminder of the historical eradication of alternative non-modern ways of living and knowing. To follow the witch's flight is therefore a defiant and collective act, a refusal to forget suppressed practices, and a resistance to the capitalist sorcery that continues to destroy our world. To think is always to follow the witch's flight. As the witches, we dart, we weave, new trajectories open, new lines of flight spark into being, each one emerging from brief touches they make with one another across the sky. We are not aspiring accountants of truth. We invite a creative engagement. We truly seek rhizomatic thought, opened by the friction of our crossings that occur when our ideas rub up against each other. New paths emerge and spells will be cast. The witch's flight is an experiment that asks whether a concept, a material, a belief, and an action can survive the attacks of time rather than simply asserting that a thing is true. We affirm a test of endurance, of transformation, of becoming. This is what it means to think for our times. So what we're about to share with you today is intended as an invitation to open new paths together, to find the slippages, the openings, and yes, some escape routes. We do not take flight in opposition, but in disciplinary companionship here together. Now, lifting off a generative exercise, let's call it alchemy, that poses the question that I want you to sit with today. What can these recommendations do? What was that, I hear you all ask? So a little housekeeping after all of that while that just settles in, because we'll return to this. This seminar is in two halves. The first half is about the design of the program, disciplinary perspectives involved, and the conditions that shape these recommendations. Phil's going to give us the context, which is amazing, and we'll look at this 16-month future focus community inquiry, its design, and how the recommendations came to be. Lauren's going to drill deeper in the second half so we can really get kind of practical. So it's like a funnel is where we're going to go. So starting out here, going to end up concrete. We're going to share in the chat for those online. We've got a beautiful exhibition that we'd like people to be introduced to the sensory and the open data of this project. So everyone's invited. But for those of you playing along at home, we haven't forgotten about you. We've got a little video that will show the data from the project to you. We have a glossary, which is here on the tables for people. Now, the Future Focus glossary is just us saying to you, this is when we say a word, this is what we mean. And what else was there, Lauren? I think that was it. That's it. Phil, this is who they're all here to see.
Thanks so much. Look, they came to me and they said, all right, we're going to introduce ourselves as like characters of some type. What character are you, Phil? Something from fiction. And I'm like, I don't know. So I went to the Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook, as you do. And I didn't want to be just one thing. I wanted to be multiple things. I'll read from the Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook just because then I can say I've done that. In Dungeons & Dragons, multi-classing allows you to gain levels in multiple classes. Doing so lets you mix the abilities of those classes to realise a character concept that might not be reflected in one of the standard class options. So like you might decide, oh, I don't want to just be a fighter, I also want to be a wizard. And you can be multiple things. This is how I came to be researching in this space. I thought I was going to be a bit of an AI wizard. I studied artificial intelligence. I even started a PhD in AI. I thought that was really going to be me, but I ended up multi-classing into education, and I found that to be a really wonderful place to be. Now, multi-classing is also interesting with respect to the context we find ourselves within, where there's a lot of conversations about AI going on. I'm part of a lot of those conversations about AI and assessment. A lot of those bits I'm in are about how can we be sure someone can do a thing and didn't get AI to do it, where that matters. And I've gone pretty far down that conversation, but I need to remind myself and keep multi-classed into the other conversation as well. People who are familiar with the TEXA published Lodge et al. Assessment for a Time of AI document might remember there's these two principles in there which are supposed to sit equally. The first one is that assessment in a time of AI should prepare students for a world where AI is ubiquitous. I'm sure it's said much better than that in the document. And the second one is that assessment in a time of AI needs to be able to assure stuff and be trustworthy and give us evidence that we can be sure someone can do a thing. The higher ed sector, and I think particularly in Australia, has become obsessed with that second one. It's become obsessed with how can we assure learning in a time of AI, and that matters a lot. I will be the first person to convince you that that matters if you don't believe it, but it's not the only thing. We need to be multi-classed, put some of our levels into this one, but also think about how do we prepare students for that time of AI? And that was what drew me to this project, because I thought I've put all my levels in the other one, really. I want to learn and level up with some dear colleagues who are focused on how do we really prepare students for a time of AI.
Thank you, Phil. All right, so we thought that it would be a good idea at this point in time, now that Danni's set the intention for our session and Phil's located the program within the broader conversation, to share a little bit of lore about ourselves, just so that you can understand that the way that we think, the way we collaborate and we draw on our disciplines, how that has impacted how this program has been designed and how the recommendations were also developed. So we're going to go ahead and assume that most of you know quite a bit about who Phil is, but Danni and I might be new names and faces to you. So for those who haven't met us before, we've worked together for several years, and in that time we've developed a shared practice that is really quite well established and also a little bit weird. So one of the things that really unites and excites us, though, is creativity. And you'll see today some of the creative artefacts of this project. So we have some at the back of the room. We also have some of the conversation posters there as well. So George Costanza is always a favourite. And so that's something that's always united us, is that creative approach. And on the screen here, you'll see a picture from Danni and my very first presentation together at HERDSA in 2022, where we were actually presenting our very first creative artefact called creative cartography. We don't look it in that. We look very excited. We were actually terrified, a little bit like we are today, in all honesty. So when it comes to creativity, though, Danni and I actually approach it very differently, because you see, Danni, you may have noticed, is all about process. She will think and read very deeply. She will go to the darkest corners of the night sky and return with treasures. I am a little more product driven, always looking to translate these insights into tangible outputs, asking the question, okay, well, what do we do with that? And it's through this shared practice that we are stronger, challenging each other to attend to either process or product more than we naturally would. And so while the projects and programs that we work on cover a range of areas like equity, transnational learning design, evidence-based teaching practice, the one thing that we are most passionate about and that we talk about literally every day, I think, is practice. So while we're going to have a little bit of fun with today's presentation, it's important that you know that the thing that we are most deadly serious about is our practice, ours and others, students and our colleagues. And so while we're in central teaching and learning roles now, we still speak our disciplinary languages, visual arts in Danni's case, which is fairly evident today, and social work for me. And we draw on these perspectives in everything we do. So in this presentation, we've aimed to sort of follow the cadence of the program from process to product. And so our tale begins with Danni's leadership of the design of the project. Over to you, Danni.
It's awkward moving up and down. So the stats. The program started in May 2024. It was a collaboration between Deakin Learning Futures and Graduate Employability. We were responding to, as Phil says, how can we enable curriculum transformation for an AI-evolving world of work? We paired senior decision-making academics with their industry and professional peers, and they examined how generative AI was reshaping their fields. And each partnership was to develop program-wide recommendations for curriculum transformation based on what they learned. Each team got a $5,000 seeding grant to extend their conversations. And in this program, we had 7 disciplinary partnerships, 9 academic perspectives, and 11 professional peers from industry. We spanned GLAM, social work, marketing, nursing, midwifery, local government, sustainability, engineering, IT and law, and you can actually click a link in there and you can see the program in a bit more detail. I think we'll share with you guys after, and online you've got access. But what was emerging across the fields was incredibly interesting. So I brought together the whole community as a 40-member multidisciplinary community of inquiry that had the 11 industry partners and 29 Deakin staff involved. And the community was captured in real time, cross-sector insights as AI was continuing to emerge. So the community conversations produced 33 fully articulated themes, which you can browse, which underpin the recommendations. But this is not special, not at all. Everyone's seen community inquiries and everyone's seen projects like this before. That was not the magic. The magic was in the privileging of practitioner-led dialogues, in the way we came together grounded in disciplinary perspectives, genuinely open to one another, with me, a disciplinary artist, an interlocutor, loving equally all the disciplines in the room. It was the elevation of a deeply theoretical, thoughtful dialogue while making it accessible through popular culture. The spirit, what these ideas sparking new, is the most interesting place to start. It was an unusually rich cross-disciplinary exchange with anthropologists talking to nurses, marketers in dialogue with sustainability experts, engineers grappling with the problems of social work, all responding to their fields as AIS evolved. It was in the invitation to engage or not, to dip in or dip out, from one-to-one conversations, leadership gatherings to theme conversation series supported by zines, social media channel that respected people's time. Access was always flexible and always negotiable. It was in the intentionality of every single interaction. The conversation series opened with Associate Professor John Deakin, who is an artist and critical thinker. He broke our brains. He left us stumbling from the room, asking more questions than we had answers for. And we saw the world differently together. It was in the personalised support as teams navigated the liminal space between the world of work and the university, a tricky, complex, scary space. And the magic was in the artefacts that materialised these practices that are usually left invisible. Through the practice-led method, I was able to be embedded with everybody. And it was the small moments and the big ones that I captured through the journals. I think people came to see how valuable the things they were thinking and doing in the moment were, because I kept saying to them, can you say that again? That's so interesting. I haven't heard that before. Everything captured in real time. So the 16 months was generative of 280 pages of process documentation, 7 zines, 108 pages in total, 33 validated and fully unpacked themes, a dense, complex, slightly chaotic archive ready to become something. And at that point, I did the only sensible thing. I handed the whole thing to Lauren.
Yes, thank you for that, Danni. And so we begin to move from process to product. But before we get to the alchemy that led to the development of these recommendations, I think it's time I introduce you to my character, my favourite witch. I'm through accepting limits because someone says they're so, some things I cannot change, but till I try, I'll never know. These defying gravity lyrics from the musical Wicked are what immediately came to mind when Danni first shared Deleuze and Guattari's Witch's Flight with me. So yes, I can bring down the tone of any conversation pretty quickly. But they also rang through my head as Danni and I grappled with how we turn this incredibly rich data set into coherent and practical set of recommendations. Luckily, I do love a mess and I love a puzzle to solve, especially when it's something somebody says we shouldn't or couldn't do. So if you're wondering what I bring to the program, it is in fact show tunes and a touch of pathological demand avoidance. But for me, these lyrics capture the ethos of our work, that uncertainty is not a problem, but a space for possibility. Alphaba engages with limits not as barriers, but as invitations to test what might emerge. She breaks a few things along the way, as did we. We tried Miro boards, card sorts, but in the end, what we reached for was one of our tried and tested practices, the broken prototype. A broken prototype is a deliberately imperfect design artefact created to spark co-design, collaboration and critique, so its flaws are intentional. This makes it an open, process-oriented method for stimulating conversation across diverse perspectives. It provides a quick, low stakes and low effort way to show what a concept might look like in practice and gives everybody a shared starting point. So to create the broken prototypes, we walked the talk and the 33 thematic provocations were uploaded into Copilot, which created the first version of them that Danni and I then examined further and refined. And then we scheduled a workshop with the entire community that actually happened in this room, where we put the prototypes through their paces. And this is where Phil officially joined the program. So while we are, not just yet, right. So while Danni and I are both firmly and proudly in the practice camp, we have a deep, abiding respect for the role of educational research. And we knew that if these recommendations were going to meet the moment, it would take both practice and research. But in truth, Phil has always been a part of our law. For you see, at that very first presentation of creative cartography, much to our horror, Phil was there. And so while we do have a very deep respect for CRADLE colleagues, back then we were a bit terrified of them because they're world-leading researchers and we are, well, a bit weird. So when Phil sat down at our round table, I did panic. I tried the academic equivalent of the Jedi mind trick. This is not the round table you were looking for. It did not work. Now, I can't tell you what happened in that round table because I was pretty busy dissociating, but I can tell you what happened afterwards. The lovely, generous, and not at all terrifying Phil Dawson introduced himself and said how much he enjoyed our work. For two people who were not even sure we belonged in academia, this was like our Sally Fields at the Oscars moment. You like us, you really like us. And for the first time, we looked at each other and said, we might actually know what we're doing here. So while this is the first time we've officially worked with Phil, his quiet support of our work over the years has meant a lot to us. And speaking to you today from the House of CRADLE, the home of educational research, as two very proud practitioners, is quite a full circle moment for us. Enough sentimentality because Danni's probably crying. Yes, she is. But now it's time to hear from the man himself, Phil Dawson, about what happened when he came to play in our house.
Thanks so much. And that's such a lovely intro. And I went along to your thing because it sounded really cool, and it was. So it really was. Yeah. Look, I'm going to do the. It's not mundane, but I'm going to do what actually happened in these rooms when we were here. So I really liked what they were doing. I'd heard of this future focused Gen AI thing. It was part of my slide deck when I would go around and talk. I'd say, you should know about this cool thing that's happening at Deakin. I've told people around the world. And then they were like, well, you could come and work with us on this. So I said, yes, please. They were at the point where they had heaps of data. How do you go from that kind of broken prototype to the beautiful couple of pages that are on the desk? We got people together in the room, people who were involved in this, and said, here is the broken prototype that you had generated. Does this work? And it was really kind of the thing, going around, trying to break it, trying to fix it, trying to make it better. We spent a long time in here doing that, and then produced something better, and then spent a couple of weeks doing more rounds of feedback and getting comments from people who couldn't make it, trying to make the thing better. And then we gradually arrived at something that we think works. It was checked with members of the community of inquiry, and we took a very inclusive sort of approach to authorship on there. So you'll see it's a massive, mega long list of people. It was a beautiful, fun day in here that we had talking through the stuff, and we had a lovely launch of it upstairs, including the more amazing artistic side of the project, as well as the deeply pragmatic stuff that's on your desk there. Or hopefully someone online has managed to put a copy of it into the chat. And if you're the sort of legend who does that when you're in these seminars, thank you very much. You're a wonderful person. And when I say that it was a huge process, it really was. We are some of the people. These are the many, many co-authors to this work. We had a launch. We've had engagement with senior execs from across the sector around this, engagements with our higher education regulator. There's a lot of enthusiasm for this. I'm going to hand back as you talk us through more where we got to in our obsessively only 2-page document.
Yeah, thank you for that, Phil. Yeah, so I suppose I see some of the community of inquiry members in the room, and just respect to that community because they were engaged all the way through and continue to be. So now the funnel continues. So we're out, we're moving in, really starting to focus on what is going on with these recommendations. What can they do? So you may have noticed in the recommendations this little hand-drawn diagram. The one with the little person in the centre and the widening spheres around them, each sphere a way of thinking of what it means to prepare future-ready graduates with a strong and grounded professional identity. So this diagram is really sort of saying we're not talking about the who of practice, but the how and why of it. And it starts with the practitioner and it moves outward, finally landing out into becoming. So at the centre for us is the practitioner, their emerging professional self. And this isn't about job titles. It's about a person developing a deep connection to themselves, their discipline and their field. A practitioner is always in the making, becoming themselves through engaged, accountable, reflective work over time. There is no external checklist that magically makes you a professional. Instead, it is a stance that's something you grow. It's embodied, situated, ethical, and responsive, and it happens over time. So how do students get there? Well, part of the answer is in the next sphere into practices. These are the concrete performances that constitute a discipline. It's the things students are introduced to, they revisit, they refine, intensify, and essentially will end up getting assessed on. And these practices will accumulate and adapt, and you'll see how we describe it in the Future Focus glossary through the lovely Dickensian idea of portable property. These are skills and ways of working that students can carry with them wherever they go without being fixed to the one context. So they'll accumulate their practices and they'll begin to develop something larger, their practice in the singular. Practice is not a fixed set of steps. It's a cumulative, willful, ongoing, embodied, ethically accountable way of becoming in one's field. It links past experiences to future possibilities. It's shaped by responsiveness, style, and yes, affect. Practice becomes a personal stance, a living configuration of histories, materials, values, relationships that keep evolving through the doing. Now, all of this unfolds within a much larger environment. We're calling it the AI evolving world of work for now. And here, intelligence is not sealed inside a device or a mind or a machine. It emerges through interactions between people, tools, environments, and infrastructures. And although we called the program Future Focus Gen AI, we quickly learned that what we're really talking about was how technology has always shaped and reshaped the world around it. An AI evolving world invites attunement, a sort of harmonizing, an ability to notice how systems shape judgment and redistribute agency. There are benefits, efficiency, extended cognition, new creative possibilities, but there are also risks, opacity, surveillance, and increased echo chambers. Practitioners need habits that are process aware and ethically transparent, ways of working with these systems, not just in or on them. So finally, encompassing all of this is the idea of becoming. So it's not a shift from one fixed state to another. It's an open-ended and relational process. People, materials, tools, environments co-emerging together. Knowledge isn't simply represented. It's generated in the heat of making. It's the try, the test, the glitch, the adjustment. Each gesture changes a situation and the practitioner changes with it. That's why process matters. It's where the new arrives. Disciplinary identities emerge as individuals embrace and cultivate mature, philosophical, ethically engaged stances. So when you look at this diagram, you're seeing a set of recursive loops between the developing self with becoming, holding it all in motion together. So Lauren, tell us about the recommendations, how they work.
So Danni's hand-drawn diagram really captures the messy recursive nature of these recommendations. But this diagram is really trying to map how it's scaffolded across a program. So all of the recommendations aim to help students to develop their personal professional AI evolved practice. But recommendations 1 and 6 are a theme that run throughout, focusing on the emerging professional self and encouraging reflection on their relationship with AI. Recommendations 2 and 5, however, are scaffolded across the years. Recommendations 2 and 3 help students to ground their practice within their discipline. First year students are introduced to the principles, values and assumptions that guide decision making in their field, which are then built upon in late first year or second year through engagement with disciplinary, creative and critical practices. Recommendations 4 and 5 see students refine their disciplinary perspectives and practices by engaging across disciplines as they progress throughout the program. In later years, they also have opportunities to translate this exploration into purposeful professional practice, particularly through workplace learning. So while we might be witches in flight and want our students to become witches in flight, we do need to touch down from time to time to consider what these recommendations can do right here and right now. So I'm going to set some ground rules, apologies for the pun, for these recommendations. Macbeth's witches note that fair is foul, foul is fair. Appearances can mislead. And these recommendations should be then therefore understood for what they are, but also for what they are not. And we're going to state these explicitly because they're really important to us. It would be very easy for these recommendations to be reduced to buzzwords or to be adopted with just the veneer of adoption. So we're stating these rules clearly today. So the first one is they're not really about Gen AI. Being future focused means looking beyond any single technology and instead concentrating on how learners think, adapt and create in evolving technological contexts. This approach recognises technology not as an endpoint, but as a shifting professional context within which enduring capabilities are exercised. And for this reason, they're also not about digital literacy. These recommendations do focus on those enduring capabilities over specific tools. They embed AI-evolved ways of thinking, doing and being within the discipline. Sometimes this engagement with AI will be explicit, but more often it will be implicit as learners encounter it alongside other emerging technologies and consider their relationship to them. So therefore, these encounters need to be designed by academics with the strong disciplinary perspective to be able to make those decisions. By incorporating current and emerging technologies as evolving contexts rather than as fixed elements, the curriculum is designed to remain relevant and sustainable. They're also not pick and mix or prescriptive. They're designed as a set for curriculum-wide adoption, and as we've explained, they are scaffolded and recursive, so they work as a group of 6. They need to be implemented in bespoke and discipline-appropriate ways, and this can only be determined by disciplinary experts supported by central teaching and learning teams like those that Danni and I come from. They are not bolt-on. If we see a 0 credit point ethics unit introduced in first year under the guise of these recommendations, we will hex you. What they are about is graduate employability. And if you think that graduate employability is part of the capitalist sorcery that witches should be resisting, then you don't know graduate employability. So Caballero and colleagues conceptualise graduate employability as comprising 4 key capabilities: career management, work readiness, which we typically know as transferable skills, the development of the emerging professional self, and discipline-specific knowledge, skills and attributes. These are often articulated through our graduate attributes, and they exist within a career development journey. And there is an important ethical imperative at play here when it comes to employability's place in the curriculum. When our students are paying $50,000 for an arts degree while navigating a significant cost of living crisis, it's simply not credible to argue that employability has no place in higher education. Suggesting that students should learn purely for learning's sake while ignoring the realities they face reflects a deeply privileged position. Most students are making substantial financial and personal most students are making a substantial personal and financial investment in their education because they hope it will open pathways into meaningful and sustainable work. Supporting employability in the curriculum is not a concession to market pressures. It is our moral obligation as educators. We have a responsibility to help students think about what they want to do with their degree, how their disciplinary knowledge connects to the world of work, and what contribution they want to make to society. To exclude employability from higher education is not a defence of intellectual purity. It risks abandoning students at precisely the moment when they most need guidance in translating their education into a viable future. I'll park my broomstick now, guys. We called this session Unknowable Futures, but AI hasn't rendered the world unknowable. It has always been so. We just like to convince ourselves that it's not. Events like COVID reminded us how quickly the things that we considered to be stable and certain can disappear overnight, and AI is creating a similar disruption. But lucky for us, career development professionals have been using things like chaos theories of careers for a while now. Bright and Pryor argue that careers operate as complex systems in which unpredictability, change and chance are normal features rather than exceptions. Careers are not linear pathways that can be fully planned in advance. According to Patton and McMahon, they are haphazard in nature. They are evolving patterns shaped by ongoing interactions among individuals, contexts, and random events. So if that is the reality of modern careers, then the role of higher education becomes clearer. Our task is not to predict specific skills or future jobs for students. It is to help them to develop a strong, emerging professional self, a deep understanding of their professional practice, and the capacity to translate that knowledge into changing contexts, including those shaped by AI. So let's take a closer look at each of the recommendations. So recommendation 1. So graduates will be required to meet not just the existing workplace AI standards, but also to navigate new responsibilities, risks, and the ethical complexity, the unknowable. So this means developing internal capacities to define their beliefs, values, identities that will enable them to navigate this complex professional landscape. Now, you'll notice in the document that the of work is in parentheses, and this is intentional because we believe that preparing students for the workplace is inseparable from preparing them for the world. Our work and life are too interconnected. Now, across employer forums, we heard a constant message. Graduates don't just need to be able to use AI, they need to be able to articulate how and why they use it or don't use it. A phrase that came up a few times is that AI doesn't have to be better at your job than you are. Your boss just needs to think it is. So graduates have always needed to be able to articulate who and how they want to be in the world of work, as my colleague David Eckstein says, but it is now more important than ever. So they need to be supported to develop their emerging professional self through embedded, scaffolded careers and employability learning throughout their program. So remember, this is one that runs across the entire program. Michael Healy notes that careers and employability learning is a psychosocial process rather than an outcome, and that learning happens through many experiences in a student's life, not just what they learn at university. It's relational, dialogical, and narrative process where learning occurs through interactions with others and the stories that students construct about themselves and their careers. However, Healy also notes that this kind of learning can be traumatic, particularly during times of transition, whether it's personal or societal. Luckily, it can also be emancipatory, fostering student agency. And it's for this reason that this kind of learning needs to be designed by career development professionals who are themselves also disciplinary experts in conjunction with disciplinary expertise within course teams. So this recommendation is revisited throughout the program, which helps students to integrate their learning experiences with their own values, beliefs and identity. And Danni's now going to talk you through recommendations 2 and 3.
So recommendation 2 is about ethics. We hear it a lot, but not the kind that can be solved with a checkbox, a resource bank, or a zero credit unit. The intersection of AI systems and ethics is far too complex for that. We're advocating disciplinary ethics to be introduced in the first year. Every discipline has its own philosophical perspectives, values, and traditions, and students need this grounding to make thoughtful, context-sensitive decisions in safety and with the time to learn and grow, because ethics are complex. So Lauren's introduced the idea of emerging professional self and how higher education can contribute to who students are becoming. Ethics is a powerful way we can support that becoming. Without an early understanding of ethical principles, the tensions in their fields, students face opaque systems, rapidly evolving technologies, and they rely on instinct alone, and instinct is not enough. Introducing ethics early gives students space in the first instance to understand them through testing ideas, making mistakes, and as novice disciplinary ethicists, they learn to navigate complexity before the stakes rise, and they do. In a programmatic approach, first-year disciplinary ethics provides a foundation for critical reasoning, which later supports more complex approaches such as ethical pluralism, which we will take up in recommendation 4. So employers are increasingly expecting graduates who can identify risks, question outputs, and contribute meaningfully to governance and regulation of AI systems. So early ethics education helps students learn not just how to follow the rules, but to question them, handle uncertainty with criticality from their own disciplinary perspective, and one that's aligned, that is ethically grounded, adaptable, and still at this point, it's developing. So recommendation 1 is about who students are becoming, and it's about how they build this foundation. So then we get to recommendation 3. Oops, I haven't moved it. I knew I'd do that. So recommendation 3, smooth, we're in the next one now, puts a focus on how students learn to think critically and creatively through the philosophical, ontological, and epistemic lens of discipline in an AI evolving world. Critical thinking and creativity are not generic capabilities. They are shaped by what each field recognises as knowledge, evidence, quality, and innovation. As AI introduces new forms of logic and reasoning into professional practice, students need to understand how these logics intersect with, support, or challenge the foundations of their discipline. So when students deliberately move between thinking with AI and thinking without it, they begin to see their discipline differently, and they start to notice the seams, what AI can do, what it can't do, what this reveals about the boundaries and priorities of their discipline, and what it means for their own evolving professional practice. These moments of contrast are where learning really can happen, and they expose the assumptions that hold a discipline together and illuminate how disciplinary judgment differs from machine-generated patterning. Students begin to identify where disciplinary values align with AI outputs, where they diverge, and where new possibilities or pressures might emerge. So if recommendation 2 focuses on how they determine what's right in their field, recommendation 3 addresses how they practice criticality and creativity within that ethical and disciplinary grounding, developing ways of thinking that remain shaped by their field rather than by constraints or conveniences of AI systems. So we're about protecting the integrity of the disciplines here, enabling them to evolve at the same time. And we want to think about staying authentic, rigorous and adaptable, and form intellectual practices that can carry our students into any future. Lauren's on to 4 and 5 now. Home stretch, folks.
We'll probably speed up a bit so we have time for questions as well. Okay, recommendation 4. So building on the strong ethical and disciplinary foundation that they've built through 2 and 3, this is where students are really going to be stress testing their understanding of their discipline. So obviously they start in intradisciplinary, but then moving into cross-disciplinary where they get to view their own discipline from another perspective. In multidisciplinary engagements in later years, they get to look at a shared problem from their disciplinary perspective, and then moving in later years into interdisciplinary where they actually get to merge some of their practices together and interact a little bit more. And really what we're trying to get students to start to understand here is a sense of ethical pluralism, as Danni said earlier. So they need to be able to have their disciplinary and ethical perspective challenged and extended, deepening their understanding. So they need to consider multiple perspectives on what is right or wrong. They need to weigh them up within the context. They need to be transparent about their reasoning, and they need to adapt their decisions as situations evolve. So this does need to be scaffolded after that initial, first year into second year foundation that they build. And so this is something that would occur in second and third year. There are some disciplines who do this incredibly well. Allied health do a lot of this built in. So we're not saying that, nobody's yet doing this. It's not brand new, but this is something that we would like to see across all disciplines. In terms of recommendation 5, students are in an exploratory stage when they are at university. We want them to explore with AI. We want them to experiment. We want them to understand what this means for their discipline, but we need to ensure that they can safely transition that into those practices into the workplace to be purposeful and professional. We need to make sure that they know how to have the critical conversations about governance, around professional expectations, disclosure and ethical responsibility and policies. And Bonnie, Dean and colleagues, many I think who are in the room, have a really comprehensive resource available that's in our reference list as well that really helps to make some of this sort of stuff concrete. But we need to make sure that if we are encouraging students to experiment with Gen AI whilst they are with us at university, that they understand that the workplace is not the place for that kind of experimentation. We have already had incidences of students failing placements because of their AI use. And so we really don't want students to go in unaware of what can happen with well-intentioned AI use that can undermine their professional trust and accountability. But we've also heard from employers that they want our graduates to help lead them in what they should be doing with AI as well. So this is a really wonderful opportunity for our students to not only contribute or not only, immerse themselves in their discipline and in their field and their profession, but also to contribute to their profession's future as well. Which then leads us to our final recommendation, Danni. Almost there, guys.
So this 6th one, I care about this the most because it's about the relationships students form with the technology and how these relationships act on them. So when I say this, I'm drawing on a long tradition of technology theory that understands technology is never neutral. It's never a defined means to a specified ends. Technologies are active participants in how we act, reason, and understand ourselves in the world. As students move through their degrees, they form these different kinds of relationships with technology. Sometimes they're very intimate. Sorry. Oh, I'm doing it again, right? Yeah. Too keen. Oh, back. Ah. See, this is what happens. Shouldn't have looked up. So it intervenes and it nudges and it frames options and it can quickly become a default trusted tool. But the goal is not to teach students to rely on AI systems, but to help them notice their relationship with the tool and what it's doing to them. When it strengthens their practice, when it weakens it, when it needs recalibration, when the expertise of others becomes critical, and yes, when it's too emotionally invested. So they need multidisciplinary spaces, and no surprise from me, studios, labs, places of practice, and also access to many disciplinary experts, lots of access to many disciplinary experts and their different views. So we can experiment at the thresholds of human and technological embodiment when we meet, where we overlap, and where we collide. So ultimately, this recommendation is about helping students develop a strong sense of professional responsibility, and it's shaped through practice and relational engagement with AI systems. And hopefully it will prepare them to enter any workplace, work with any technology with a grounded sense of judgment, a clear understanding of their responsibilities, and a well-developed AI-evolved experimental practice that is rigorous, it's playful, it's grounded in their discipline and ready for any unknowable future world. We're nearly there.
Stay there, Danni. Don't move because I'm only going to be a minute. So as you can see, so we'll go back to our diagram. That's all right. These recommendations are designed as a set, both recursive and scaffolded. Our aim is for learning experiences to provoke students to continually return to the self and to their discipline. What does that mean for who and how I want to be in the world of work? Simply put, the recommendations seek to build a solid foundation, to rock those foundations, and then equip students with the capabilities to determine for themselves what they would like to build on them. Danni, bring us home.
Yes. Born by broomstick, we have travelled through the twists and turns of a 16-month community of inquiry, shaped by a turbulent sector and the ongoing push for higher education transformation in an AI evolving world of work. With our most valued colleagues and partners, we developed these recommendations, drawn direct from realities of practice into 6 curriculum-wide recommendations we share with you today. We stand before you today as practitioners. We take practice seriously, our own, our students, and yours. If you take nothing else from this seminar, let it be this. These recommendations are a love note to the disciplines. They are recursive, contextual, and grounded in genuine academic practices. They are not about Gen AI, but responsive to it. They are also not to be confused with digital literacy, nor any other bolt-on resource. They are contextual and they are embedded. They rely on strong disciplinary and interdisciplinary expertise so that curriculum can be regenerative, it can be relevant, and it also can be resilient as contexts continue to shift and unfold and we are all bedeviled by change. What they are about is graduate employability, not predicting jobs or skills, but helping students develop a strong, emerging professional identity, a deep understanding of disciplinary practice, and the capacity to translate that practice into changing worlds, including but not limited to those shaped by AI. So let's end at the beginning, not for us, but for you, as we set aside our broomsticks and invite you to take up your own. Choose your player. And the question for the next, hey, this is what happens. You should never be trusted to click a button, ever. All right, you can do the last finale one, okay? Yeah. So what we're going to do for the next half hour now, or 15 minutes, or 10 or 5, is it? We've gone too long. We got to wrestle with this question. What can these recommendations do? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and to be continued indeed. So how this usually works, as I said, so we're just talking about the continuing, onto the logistics, the bare nuts and bolts. No lines of flight here. What we'll do is we will take a question from online and a question from the floor to take us to the full hour. If you have to leave, then please, if you're online, just click a button, and if you're in the room, just sort of walk out the back door, and then we'll continue on depending on how the flow takes us. So back to lines of flight indeed. So I'll take one question from the floor and one question online. I might start online. Jack?
Testing. Here we go. Thank you. I have lots of questions I want to ask you later on. So, my job now is to ask the online questions, but more chats, I think. The first one is from Luke Heemsbergen, who I don't think is in the room. I'm not sure. Luke's written great stuff. Can you expand on it not being about digital literacy, in inverted commas, as I think there's narrow technicist versions or views of literacy and more critical socio-technical understandings. He's referenced Lucy Pangrazio's work there on digital platforms and systems. And he's asked, how do you jive or jank with or from that type of thinking?
Yeah, friend. So what he's talking about is sort of something a little bit more concrete than what we're talking about. So when we're saying this is not about digital literacy, what we're really talking about is how do we speak in a discipline agnostic way for curriculum recommendations that can be applicable across a lot of disciplines. So when we're talking about this as a transformative practice, we're talking about like a deep rinse and really working deeply into the curriculum. So I suppose what we're trying to say is when we're talking about digital literacy, we're talking specifically about resources that are brought out to sort of overlay or laminate across curriculums to augment disciplinary knowledge. And we're not about that. What we're talking about is a deep, embedded and embodied way of bringing these practices into whatever curriculum you're dealing in. And I suppose from a central division perspective, we're looking out across all the disciplines and we're in conversation with all the disciplines. And you've got to have a sort of a way to have a shorthand to get straight to you've got technology, say, for example, with architecture, they've got a very different relationship with AI systems than, say, literature. And so we're going to be having very, very different conversations across the disciplines about where technologies fit in that educational journey for students. So I hope I've answered that great, but I am also going to take that up with Luke as well, because we're meeting tomorrow. Yes.
Sorry to cut you off there, Danni. Just taking, because we've got time for one from the floor. Has anyone got a question? Yes, thank you.
Hi there. Look, I've got a booming voice. I find it difficult. I work at La Trobe, and I find it very, in this kind of space, I find it very difficult, if not contradictory, to talk about any ethics when it comes to Gen AI. Only this week, Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir, said the whole intention or the whole purpose or the whole is to take those jobs that middle-class, white, progressive, Democrat voting women would traditionally have, get them off the table, and presumably part of the trad wife movement, get women back in the home and so forth. So I guess my question is, how do you, and I understand the enthusiasm and the responsibility to students and indeed to our colleagues, how do you deal with that elephant in the room, which is the tech bros who run this whole show? I think the only person who I can excuse would be Meredith Whittaker, the CEO of Signal, but everyone else, how do you deal with that stuff? Because all this tech is used for surveillance, automatic weapons. I know I'm stating the obvious. Is it really anti-capitalism we're doing? Is it really ethical?
So we're getting the tech bro to address the tech bro question.
I got. They looked at me. Were like, "You want to take this one?"
I'll take it.
I'm happy. All right. Okay. All right. And this is.
this is a personal view. We need to prepare students for the world that is there, not the world that we wish was there. And this has been true across all sorts of different changes. We're in dark times, and I won't disagree with you about any of what you've said. There's some horrific stuff there. I think that only emboldens us more to pursue the agenda that we've put forward. And, you know, our rejection of things like inoculate them with a first-year ethics zero credit unit, for instance. I also think that, and this may be where we diverge a little, I don't think you can be an effective resistor to AI or detractor from it if you don't have some experience actually using it. I think if you want to get into the room where the conversations happen and speak up against inappropriate AI use or stuff you disagree with, I think you need the AI chops to be able to engage in that. Yeah, so agree, but that only gives us more desire to pursue this agenda. Thanks so much for raising it, though.
Sorry. We are absolutely not AI evangelists. In fact, Danni and I tried to avoid having to do anything to do with AI for a very long time, and we're given this project and we're like, oh, we've got to do something about it. But it was very much, our view of it is exactly as Phil said, it is here. And so we need to deal with it because it is here, but we are absolutely not put it everywhere and rah, rah, rah. And on a personal note, I have a second year, my son is a second year animation student and despises AI, is disgusted I'm even working on this project, right? So I've had to, but what I want for my son is to not just say, I don't use AI because it steals people's work. I want him to be able to go into a job interview and say, I don't use it because this, I know what it is, I know what it can do, and I prefer, you know, and that's what I want for my son as well. So I think we have to, part of this is equipping resistors with the understanding and the language to share that as part of their own professional practice as well. Yeah.
So on that note of resistance, if you'd like to leave now, please do. Otherwise, we will continue on. But again, I'll do the formal part of the proceedings, which is where because you can drift off now. Give them a clap, a round of applause, and online, virtual applause, please. A reminder that Yuso Niemanen will be leading Beyond Grades seminar I've lost the date now, sometime in early April, sort of the second week in April. And thank you for coming to the CRADLE Seminar, and we will continue the conversation. So having said that, people leave, but anyone wants to ask a question, please raise your hand. We're continuing on. Jack?
So another one, this one is from David Scrimger. And it goes back to the idea of, I think, developing the recommendations and prototyping them. And David's written, what is an example of a broken prototype? He said, I love this idea. It's so suggestive. Can you talk through the collaborative process of unbreaking one, so long as it's not too time consuming? And has the process been published somewhere? David has just written in a couple of minutes ago a little bit of an additional bit to that, which is, in a way, I see the process of unbreaking to be an exploration of what we don't know yet, or what a body can do, which is a reference to Spinoza that I might be getting wrong as I say it, but something that Deleuze famously seized on, and of course you've been referencing Deleuze.
Yeah, and that is the provocation, right? What can this body do? You know, it's not about where the limits are. It's like looking at something and thinking, how can it be made to be productive, which is sort of the essence of the broken prototype. And it's part of the toolkit. It's not perfect every time, but say the broken prototype was, we had all of those, and you can touch them, feel them. The themes are not just one-liners, they're fully unpacked. So there's quite a lot of text involved in those 33 themes. So to throw them into ChatGPT, I think what I really like that AI can do is pattern recognition. So it would sort of like curate it and pull it all together. And the thing is, I was there for every single conversation. I heard what everybody said. I watched everything from the front row. So I completely was able to go through with Lauren, and Lauren was with me as well, crying in the car park when things didn't work out. But we validated every single one of the 6 broken prototype recommendations. But we were also really conscious what the AI spat out at us was not great. What we validated was not great. And we wanted to bring it to that group who had also invested themselves in 16 months of conversations and say, does this check out to you? Like, this is the 6 that we've got from this process. We're very transparent about how these broken prototypes came to be. We're very transparent about the fact that they're not right. Tell us where they're wrong. And I think that was a nice thing, Phil, wasn't it? It's like people were really engaged and they're like, yeah, that word's not right. No, that's not quite right. And that's not how I experienced it. And I think there were times where you were at the table with the social workers and the lawyers and they were getting into some pretty fierce debates, saying, well, that's not quite right for our discipline and that's not quite right for our discipline. So I think it's not where the broken prototype is something that is deliberately flawed and that you disclose that it's flawed. And it's just... Has anybody ever experienced the fear of blank piece of paper? I'm sure you have. And you've got very limited time. You've got to respect people's time when you've got it. So it's sort of like a very quick way to get us straight into it without sort of warm-ups and here it is. Tell me what you think. People will have visceral reactions to things. They'll know immediately when it's wrong, especially when you've got a group that was that deeply invested. I hope I've explained that okay.
I can maybe add something.
Yeah,
just chipping in at the end of all this. We also had another broken thing, which was a curriculum framework, which it was a quick and dirty thing that we put up. So we had these big A3 pieces of paper for the workshop, which had the broken prototype recommendation at the top and then had things that we wanted them to contribute to. So around, what needed to be happening in assessment, what was the support for students, what was the support for staff, what were the things that we needed to consider. And so we had 3 tables, I think we had 6 recommendations. So we did sort of a round robin where each table had 2 of the recommendations and they needed to spend, half an hour filling in what they could in that broken framework. We had some rules, so you couldn't, we did yes and from improv inspired by Phil. So it was, you can't cross out somebody else's and replace it. You've got to build on it. We didn't want to have things that we already knew, don't tell us stuff that's already been discussed and put out there. What new can we add to this? And so it went round the table, so everybody had a turn with those recommendations, and that's what Danni took home. The most precious cargo on the train that night was these huge pieces of paper, and then that's what was transcribed that then the 3 of us sat down with and sort of said, okay, what are they now? We had a go at what this all means, and then I think we all went off and kind of came back with what we'd done. I think I speak in PowerPoint, so mine was a PowerPoint. I think Danni, yours was a drawing. Phil, you had some thoughts. Phil asked for 2 pages. He insisted. We came back with 8. I've never seen Phil's disappointed dad face before, but that we saw at that time. It's like, relax, Phil, we know it'll get down to 2. And it was just honing it from there, I think.
And circulating with the community.
Yeah.
Once we'd settled with it, we circulated again.
Sorry, you have to use the mic, Danni.
Yeah. Sorry, so Danni was just, you got that?
Yeah, sorry. And I suppose it's really important to say that we never left our community behind. We might be standing here today, the 3 of us, but we do represent that 40-member community of inquiry. This is their work. This is our love note to them. So while we're talking about it, that community is still present with us today. Yeah.
Dave?
Well, thanks for describing your wonderful creative process of getting there. It strikes me you've got these wonderful high-level principles that you've come out with, and I'm curious to know about where we go from here. That you made a big thing about how much you were grounded in practice, and it seems to me these came from practice, but there's a big issue of interpretation. So, is the project continuing? Will you be coming up with examples of programs that are actually translating these things into what you do on the ground? Because I think for a lot of people, they will need help in moving from the high level to what the hell do we do with this?
You go. This is for you.
All right. In answer to where this goes from here, specifically within Deakin, we have broader discussions around big curriculum transformation processes, of which this will be a part of. So we will be part of that. We will continue to work in practice-led ways. So as we are working, we don't have full control over it, I'll say that now, it's not our decision, but the way that we see these working is that those central teaching and learning areas need to support the disciplinary teams in how to interpret these, but they are led by the disciplinary expertise of that. And through that, we are very much it's in the handling of it. So the way if you said to us, go do this, we would have the course teams, we would work with them, we would be creating artifacts out of that. From there, you then have resources for other folks to draw on as well. And it's through that practice that we really get to see how these do work in practice. So we would struggle to be able to say this is how you would implement it, because the way we would do it is actually the two of us to sit and work with the course team, because that's how you figure out, and that's how you then scale once you've done it with the course team. So that's what we are hoping to do next, David. I think we are in a little bit of a holding pattern on this, which is very difficult for us because we are doers, we are makers, and we're very much looking forward to that. And we certainly, the courses that are part of this program are very keen. They also have their own disciplinary recommendations as well that are specific to their discipline. So we're all set to go and just waiting for a few other things to fall into place.
But I will also say that, like, the 7 disciplinary partnerships involved, and again, like, they will have their moment, and hopefully we're providing a base for them to start to speak with their own disciplinary recommendations, and we have them. We've got them. And they've already started implementing them because they know their disciplines best and they know how their transformations are working. I think the nursing and midwifery folk are already on it, social workers already on it. So we will have some really good case studies with our community of inquiry as concrete. And I think we could almost say that we would already have concrete examples of this. We just haven't mined it yet, but it's exciting.
We'll take one more from online, and then we'll go to you, Chris.
Online in the order?
Yeah.
What's that? Go online. It's okay.
Sorry, I'm hyper.
So this one is from, I think, actually follows Dave's question really well. This is an anonymous question. And no, it's very nice and friendly. They said it's amazing work and makes perfect sense. But they're actually also asking, what if I'm not in a position to implement these changes at a curriculum-wide level, but I've got a small window in first year to embrace my inner witch and just try? So knowing that you've got these other things in the pipeline, but they'll be coming a little later, what do you have a, quotable quote?
I'm going to assume this person isn't at Deakin, so I don't get in trouble for what I say. Look, our witchy poos would absolutely say, we are practice-led experimenting with things. We would absolutely encourage that. I think these were designed for program leaders. So ideally they are done in a course-wide way, but we would never want to say to somebody if there's a little thing that you can do. I think also show, don't tell is fantastic. So if Anonymous can develop something in first year and then, yes, definitely send it to us, but also it's something that they can then share with their leadership to say, hey, look, these are these recommendations. I've already actually done this. It was kind of a bit easy actually because I just had to change this, this and this, and it worked really well. That can then help for leaders to say, oh, actually this is possibly something we can do. So I'm saying this, assuming Anonymous does not work at Deakin, and I don't get in trouble for telling them to absolutely go for it.
Thank you, Chris. Now it's your turn.
Thank you. I think you tread the tightrope between this not being about AI and it being about AI really quite carefully, and I can see the tension in that. The 6 recommendations make perfect practice-based sense. I'm curious about one of the kind of a central premise in what seems to be your argument is that, and I'm curious as to whether this came through from the workshop or it's kind of already baked into your premise. The idea that AI can, in fact, introduce new logic and reasoning.
I would do you want to? Yeah, and then you. Yeah. Okay, so my disciplinary background is the creative arts. Yeah. My PhD was collaboration with AI. I went in it quite deeply for 10 years and worked with an AI system to generate my own drawing practice. So I trained in AI on 10 years of drawing practice, and I drew with it. And I had a robot, and I think it was that deep embodied engagement with a tool like that over 10 years that I can absolutely guarantee you that it changes you and that there's a reciprocal relation that emerges with the technology. There's also centuries of technology research that will say that that is it. But that is a very particular disciplinary stance I take, and I take it from the new materialisms. And that is why I'm speaking from that position. And I am very, very comfortable that there are other disciplines that will really reject that stance. And I love that there is that, because there should be. I think we should be interrogating this very carefully. This technology acts on us a little bit differently than all the technologies that have ever come before. So that's a premise. Yeah.
That seems to be a given.
Use the mic, sorry.
Use the mic.
Yeah, that seems to be a given.
Yeah.
That technology just change who we are and what we do. The point of your talk was that it changes logic and reasoning. I think that's a different matter completely.
Maybe it came.
Technology change what is logically possible. It might change what is technologically possible. Does it change logic and reasoning?
I don't know that we were arguing that, but if we did say it that way, I need to look at it. So I need to think more about that question, and I need to think about that, because I think you're right. I think I intuitively think, no, that's not what we mean. That's not what we mean. But I suppose that's why I'm grounding myself in my discipline. And I'm saying to you that the new materialisms would say that all the relationships are always in motion and things are all changing, all of it, even logic and reasoning. But not the technology doesn't do that. We do that in relation. Yeah. But maybe not. I'm going to think about that. It's good. It's good. I love it. Yeah.
How many more do we have online, Jack?
We've got one more.
All right, we'll take that one, and then I think I'll wrap after that.
So this question is from Matt Brett. And I think it's a nice kind of expansive.
He's stuck in. He's in the room.
Yeah.
Well, it's an online ad. Perfect.
Look at that.
He's boosting our numbers.
This is it.
Ask Matt's question for him.
Yeah. Or do I read this one out, or do I? Yeah.
Go for it.
This is
read away. Matt is in the room. That's for people online.
Mixed mode question asking. Matt has asked, and I hope I get this right. In the spirit of following the witch's flight and building on comments in the room about who's running the show, how might the principles be used to build stronger collective/academic influence over what universities are and what they can be? An easy one to finish.
Burn, Matt Brett.
Oh. Could you read the question again, please, Jack? Sorry.
This isn't a test, is it?
No.
So in the spirit of following the witch's flight, holding the witchiness, building on the comments around who's running the show, I guess that means of AI and its place in education, maybe. How might the principles be used to build stronger collective/academic influence over what universities are and what they can be?
Yeah. I might piggyback as well.
Yeah.
I've got things to say.
Jeez, Matt. Oh my God. Okay. So I think one of the things that we really focused on in this was around the power of the disciplines, and that in many ways it felt like the disciplines had lost being the forefront of courses and what happens in a course. I think as a university, we sometimes do this. I think that we often don't. We are full of experts. We're a university. It's the whole point of us. And yet we often have folks making decisions without that expertise around what we should be doing and how we should operate. And so I think that the witches in flight is around the power of when our disciplines come together, when we're really strong in our expertise and our ethical stance. That's really powerful. And I think as staff, if we can do that, one of the beautiful things in this program was watching that multidisciplinary community and watching sustainability folks saying to the lawyers, hey, we could really build something together here, and looking at the interventions in the curriculum they could build. That was really powerful. And so I think that for us, it's about, we are full of expertise in this university, and I don't think we harness it for our own operations in ways that we really should be. So that would be that's my very practical answer. So I'll hand over for, I'm sure, a much more intellectual one.
No, I love this university, and I love the people who populate universities, and I wake up every single day going like, how can we be better? Like, how can we come together? How can we be in this space where people are thinking thoughts that have never been thought in the world before, and how can we bring them together in productive ways to kind of challenge each other. I think that the Future Focused Gen AI program, I have ambitions for that community map, Brett. They're not done yet. We're not done. And I think it's a show don't tell situation. We all have a will to work together. We've all worked out a way of using the very tiny slivers of time to keep the conversation going. But now it's time to do it, David Bowd. It's time for us to show, don't tell. And I think we need to make stuff, and we need to do stuff, and we need to get into the studio, and we need to show what the productivity and generativity of these kinds of cross collaborations can do, and they can do a lot. And hopefully that shows that it's viable, that this is something that, you can nickel and dime it over there, or you can actually have people doing incredible work par excellence. Show this is what the university is. This is what we can do in the world. It's our social responsibility.
So now we come to a close. Thank you, Danni, for reminding us of our social responsibilities, which do weigh heavy on us, I think. And you can tell from the questions we're talking very big, but we also, I think, have the obligation to be continued very small as well. And that's part of the challenge of this space. We ask such big questions. We go from, the boss of Palantir, or whether AI can enable new ways of thinking, to what will our first years do in the blink of an eye. And I think that is the to be continued in front of us all. So thank you so much for sharing this, I think more than anything, beautiful way of working, as well as, the process as well as product. I commend to you the materials that were handed about, available online as well for those online. And if you want to give one more clap, please do that, and then we'll wind up. And thanks to you folks online for being so active.